especially now that President Obama wants to slowly disengage from Iraq, one of the critical pieces to the stability of Iraq, to Iraq staying together ultimately, is working on Kurdistan. And when I say Kurdistan, I mean not just the Iraqi component, but also the other components in Turkey, especially Turkey. Syria and Iran are not as important at the moment. But the Kurdish issue, especially after the 2003 Iraq war, has become a regional issue. It is, you can no longer look at it piecemeal by focusing on each country. You have to approach it wholly, because what happens in one part of the Kurdish region affects the other parts of the Kurdish region. There are synergies that we can benefit from this, but it also is important to eliminate what bad can happen as a result.
The Kurdistan region of Iraq today is a significant player in Iraqi politics, but also in the politics of the region. We are a major contributing force to the stability and democracy in Iraq, and its relevance today in the region is prevalent and requires increased level of participation and attention from the US and other allies from around the world.
It is critical for the United States to start thinking about this now, because as we proceed with the disengagement, our influence will wane in Iraq, and therefore we need to hit the iron when it's hot. And so it's very important for us to help, and we haven't done this in the past, to help look at some of these issues, but consolidate, for instance, the most important is the Iraqi region in the Kurdish region in northern Iraq, the federal region, because although it is in the constitution, there are many disputed territories. There's still a great deal of animosity and lack of trust between Baghdad and the Kurdish region. So we need to help consolidate this before we leave. So we can't leave things undone. Similarly, there's a question of the PKK that's based in northern Iraq. We need to help diffuse that situation. We need to consolidate the relationship between the Iraqi Kurdish government and the Turks, because those two have been at odds for a very, very long period of time. There's been a lot of improvement, but that improvement will not continue unless we intervene and we consolidate that as well, because the moment we pull back, those relationships can change very, very quickly. So we need to, there are many, many steps we need to work on, and we need to figure out in the bureaucracy how we're going to deal with this issue, because there's a great deal of stovepiping that goes on in the bureaucracy, and different countries fall in different parts of the bureaucracy, and those parts do not usually talk to each other. For example, Turkey is part of Europe, in the Defense Department, at the NSC, at the State Department, whereas Iraq is in the Near East Bureau. So those two bureaus don't usually coordinate or talk to each other. So we need to make sure that there is also a coordinated approach.
As the US begins to develop its policies for Iraq and thinks about withdrawing from Iraq in a responsible and phased way, it has to look at what are the key issues in Iraq that are outstanding. Some of the issues that we discussed today that are very well drawn out in the report include implementing the constitution of the country, implementing federalism beyond the concept of federalism, but actually beginning to implement it in a governance way, knowing what powers lie with the regions, what powers lie with the federal government. Addressing the issues of disputed territories in Iraq, the Article 140 issue, where you finalize the administrative status of places like Kirkuk and Khanaqin that have been disputed for so long, and the genocide took place in the 80s and 90s. Finalizing the issue of the hydrocarbons law and putting in place an equitable revenue sharing formula. These are all tangible issues. In particular the revenue sharing issue, because you're talking about distributing the wealth of the country to all the citizens of the country, and you're not going to get citizen buy-in to a country if they're feeling oppressed, if they're feeling left out, if they're not getting the fair share of the resources from the country. Every one of these issues has the ability to cause problems in Iraq if left unresolved. So the US and this new administration cannot think about disengaging from Iraq unless there is a sound policy to address these outstanding political issues in the country.
Well, first of all, the Turks, and they have taken moves, and this is important to emphasize, to stop looking at northern Iraq as a potential threat to them. But they have, when I say they have started, they have not completed that process yet. But they also need to deal with the Iran Kurdish problem, because ultimately the Iran Kurdish problem is going to influence what happens in northern Iraq, and it will destabilize northern Iraq. And so they need to work on both internationally and domestically and start resolving some of their own problems. But that is also important for Turkey and for the United States, especially in the context of the European Union application process that Turkey is engaged in, because Europeans are not going to let the Turks in without a Kurdish question that has not been resolved.
Turkey is an important neighbor for Iraq, and in particular for the Kurdistan region of Iraq. And we're pleased to see that the relationship between Turkey and the Kurdistan region has evolved and has progressed. And we're hoping to build on the good environment that exists right now between the two sides. We're hoping that Turkey can continue to engage with the Kurdistan region politically and also economically, as Turkish businesses have led the way to developing the Kurdistan region of Iraq. This economic partnership between Turkey and the Kurdistan region has been a bridge towards improving political relations between the two sides. We're hoping that the trends will continue to move in the right direction, and we're looking forward to 2009.